So this morning I woke up thinking about love, and let me just read first the most famous passage probably in the whole Bible, 1 Corinthians 13, the passage about love. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. Love does not demand its own way. Love is not irritable, and it keeps no record of when it has been wronged. It is never glad about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. Wow. Okay, I used to try to be this. I used to try to live this. I strove so hard to live as Christ said to live in my everyday life. You know, in the Gospels, Jesus tells us to love our neighbor as ourselves. And I did kind things. I tried not to be rude, I tried not to be self-seeking, but all the while, something down deep inside of me just felt like something wasn't right, and like something wasn't real. And I just thought that I was crazy because everything that I knew was just to kind of do these nice things and be kind and patient and loving and live the good Christian life, try not to sin, all this kind of stuff. And that was what my life was wrapped around about. And but I got so exhausted, completely exhausted, and I gave up. And it was that night that I talked about in the other videos when Jesus showed up that everything changed. But first, I remember trying to love my husband. Oh my goodness. As you know, he was a pastor for so many years, and it was, oh my goodness, it was really stressful. So I remember I would read all these books about how to be a good wife, and he would read these books about how to be a good husband and everything, and because our relationship wasn't very good. I actually despised him, and he definitely wasn't very fond of me. And I remember I just gotten done reading this one book, and one of the things this book said was, for a wife to ask her husband, is there something that I can do for you today that would make your life, your day a little bit easier? And so I went out before my husband left for some church function and just asked him that. And he just looked at me like, where did that come from? And I was like, well, I don't know, but is there something that I could do, for you that would make your life easier for the day? And he was just like, well, a button on my shirt sleeve fell off. Could you please, sew it back on? So very begrudgingly, I sewed his shirt button back on and hated every minute of it. And oh my gosh, despised my husband inside. It didn't do any good to ask him to, what I could do to help his day. I just despised him even more. And then I remember this one time when we were driving to church, and I'll just be real for a moment. For so many years, I really struggled with the way that I look. I have this really crazy, frizzy, wavy hair, and it's very hard to tame. And it bothers me, and the way I look just always really, really bothered me a whole lot. So I was always late, and I would make him late because I was so concerned about my appearance and how I looked. And so this one time on the way to work, or on the way to church, we were really, really late because it was all my fault, and it always must be my fault. And he looked at me on the way to church, and he goes, we're late again. He said, but I'm going to love you the way Christ loved the church. And, you can just feel this anger surging out of him. And I was like, oh yeah, that's how Christ loved the church, this anger seething out of him, towards his church. And so that didn't go over very well either. But both of us strove so hard to try to love each other. And we both were just exhausted, and we just, I think, just kind of gave up. But that night, when Jesus showed up, I don't know why Jesus, chose that night. I don't know why he waited so long to change my heart. But I remember when he showed up that night, love being born in my heart for this man I had just despised 2 minutes ago and had despised for so many years. It was like this intense love for him. And my husband noticed the change right away from the time he got home that night, and he said he actually watched me for 2 years to see if I was going to go back, to the old horrible me. And he said I never went back to the old me, and it was after those 2 years that God actually started changing his heart, and love was born in his heart, and our marriage is amazing now. But it wasn't amazing because we tried all these things that the book said, or we strove to love each other, or whatever. It was because Jesus showed up, and I can't understand it. I really can't understand it. But I think, as far as I know right now, it's impossible to love. I just don't, I tried and I couldn't. But what I have seen and what I have learned is that when Jesus shows up, and Jesus changes a heart, he plants his heart inside of our heart, and who he is starts just coming out of us because we're new creations in him, and we become so much more like him. So we're now able to love, not knowing how we're loving, but we're able to start to love. And to me that was really exciting, because I was so tired of striving to live this Christian life. And so it was something just completely mystical. So I really think that love is really mystical. We should do all these good things even if our hearts don't feel love, because it's a better way to live than not doing the kind things. But it's amazing when love actually is born in your heart, and you can do things from love, flowing out of your heart. And so that's what I learned. I'm not saying that I can love everybody, or anything, because we're all human. But I remember that mysticalness of that night when Jesus showed up and love was born. So I like to remember to keep my eyes focused and fixed on Jesus. That is my only way to start to overcome fear and to be able to love and be able to live a more compelling life.